Okay, we'll get started. The cow of July 9th, 2019. We'll get started with the roll call.
Miller?
Here.
Rosado?
Here.
Beck? Here. Knopf? Chanzit?
Here.
Salvati?
Here.
Wolf? O'Brien?
Here.
Callahan? Meitzler?
Here.
Malay?
Here.
Ewer?
Here.
Cerrone?
Here.
And McFadden?
Here.
Okay, it looks like we have a quorum. So item number 2, just for everyone to speak into the microphone for the recording, BATV recording. Item number 3, items removed, added, or changed. Alderman Chanzit, do we have anything?
Nothing.
Okay, item number 4, matters from the public. For items not on the agenda, if you wish to address the council, please. Nothing there. Item number 5, a presentation, bike sharing, Ryan Peterson, Kane County. Yikes.
Are they?
Should be pulling up.
It was up there before, wasn't it?
Yeah, we'll figure it out. Just when you think you got technology figured out.
It's coming on. It's coming on. It's coming
Is
on.
it? Oh, here we go. Perfect.
All right.
No worries.
Patience is it?
Yes, it is. Well, thank you all for having me tonight. My name is Ryan Peterson. I'm a transportation planner for the Kane County DOT. Tonight I'll be talking about the bike share system that we're putting together for the Kane County. And so if you have any questions, feel free to ask those at the end. And also have my contact information up at the end as well. So if you think of any questions after tonight, feel free to reach out to me, contact me throughout any of this process as well. So before we get started on the process that we're going to take for this program, I want to talk a little bit about what bike sharing is and give you an introduction to that. So bike sharing, it's a public or private bike rental service administered by campuses, companies, municipalities, for residents or for students and things like that. Based on the different membership options they offer, there are yearly memberships, monthly memberships, and so you basically pay a fee to rent these bikes for a certain period of time. And so when it's working properly, it operates as an on-demand public transportation option that complements other public transportation options already in place, like buses and trains and things like that. It serves a number of different roles within communities. It's very ideal for tourism. It provides a predictable, consistent commuting trip so people can ride to work and then take another form of transportation home or vice versa. And in the suburbs, it functions primarily as a recreational opportunity and amenity. So it offers, another way to enjoy the trails where you don't have to use your personal bike. So if it's just a spur of the moment type of ride, you can enjoy that as well. And then it also provides to and from transit options, or to and from transit stations, I should say. Another option for transportation to there that doesn't involve just getting in your car, parking at a train station, and then taking the train into the city each day. So there are several different types of bike share systems. We're going to be looking at only docked bike sharing for this particular program. And so a docked bike share is when you rent a bike from a physical station, which is fixed to the ground, and then you rent it, and then you have to return it to another bike share station itself. So it doesn't have to be the same exact station. You can take it to another station as long as it's in that system. But you must return it to another station or else your ride continues. And so this is really great for economic development because you have a permanent amenity within your community that you can say, this is where our bike share is. You can use it whenever you'd like. You can also provide sponsorships. You can use it as an economic development tool as well. So this is a short video that I'm going to actually make the presentation available. So if you guys want to check it out, it actually just shows how bike sharing works and how you check out a bike from a station. So this is a typical docked bike. This is a very durable bike. It's about 40 pounds. Each one comes equipped with a light, a kickstand, usually a basket, and GPS components on board as well. It's very durable. It's very safe. There's been multiple, hundreds upon thousands of, collisions, but there's only been one bike share fatality. It just goes to show how durable and how safe these bikes actually are. And so there's several different benefits to bike sharing. First and foremost, economic, which is something that a lot of people are mostly interested in when it comes to bike sharing. It has a high fare box return rate of about 80%. So that means every time someone spends $1 in the system, you get 80 cents back for the owner of the station, which is very high. Trains and buses operate somewhere between 40 and 70% of fare box return. And it also helps to generate more revenue in downtown districts by bringing in more people, bringing more foot traffic, and it takes up a lot less space than automobile parking as well. It puts far less strain on your roads, so you're paying less for road maintenance as well, and it can help to greatly decrease congestion, especially in your downtown areas. And then for health and environmental, obviously less automobile trips will result in less emissions and a less environmental impact on your communities. So let's talk a little bit about how you would go about creating a bike share system. So what do you want to do first? You want to find out ideal locations for where you want to put these stations themselves. So you want to always connect them to transit, so whether that's near metro stations, near bus stations, or near other forms of public transportation. In the suburbs, you always want to connect them to your regional trails. In the suburbs, they really won't be successful unless they're near highly trafficked regional trails. And then you want to avoid physical barriers like highway underpasses, gated parks or gated residential areas, highways that are very highly trafficked or very high speeds. And then you want to locate them between uses that generate activity at different times of the day. So you want to put it, near apartments or restaurants that have, different uses during various times of the day. And you also want to put it within riding distance of another station in the network. If you put it off, 2 miles away from another station, it's not going to get very high ridership, and it's going to be very hard for you to increase your ridership within that station and within your network as well. So your revenue streams. So this is you are able to make revenue from this project. It's not a profitable venture necessarily, but you are able to generate some revenue. So the big one is going to be your local and governmental funding that you get from your municipalities or your organizations. You can have sponsorships, and I'll go into a little bit into that in the next slide. And then you also have private investment as well. So large companies or large donors who see the public benefit in this type of amenity. And then you have your user fees, whether that be annual, daily, monthly, or just an hourly ride as well. And then your advertising revenue, so you can actually advertise within the app itself, within the Bike Share app, so that you can actually generate more revenue that way as well. So this is all of the options you have for a bike share station and a bike share for sponsorships. So you can put it on your wheel well, your baskets, your stations themselves, the displays on the kiosks. So if you want to absolutely NASCAR this thing out and have logos everywhere, you're able to do that. That is completely up to the owners of the stations themselves, and that's completely, like I said, up to you guys how you want to do that. If you want to put the City of Batavia's logo on them, you're welcome to do that, or reach out to other companies and other organizations throughout your community as well. And if I'm going a little too fast, these slides will be available. I will email them out to you guys so you have them, this information as well. And so with bike sharing, there comes a lot of misinformation out there. The two big myths that I hear are bike sharing is unsafe and bike sharing hurts businesses because it will decrease automobile traffic. Two very untrue statements, but unfortunately we do hear it a lot. Bike sharing is far safer than taking your personal bike out for a ride. That's because you're typically riding in city or more urban areas and more dense areas, so it actually creates a higher level of safety. And these are big, really durable bikes, so you're not actually, if you do get hit, you're less likely to get injured on these bikes as well. And then the second one being bike share hurts businesses because it will decrease automobile traffic. And actually, it's been shown that bikers actually spend more at grocery stores, restaurants, and bars than automobile drivers. So if you have more bikers coming through your downtown districts and your commercial areas, you actually generate more revenue than if you just increase your automobile parking in those areas. And then I'm going to go a little bit into how we are going to go about creating this bike share system. So we are hoping to launch at least 12 stations by August 2020 throughout the county. We're hoping to incorporate several different safety initiatives as well. including bike safety classes for all ages, even though typically you have to be 18 in order to rent a bike share bike. We do want to create sort of a culture of safe bike riding so that when these younger age groups are able to ride these bike share bikes, that they do it safely and they do it responsibly. We also want to incorporate bicycle safety into driver's ed classes. We find that to be very useful. Several districts within Aurora and around the area have done this and have shown some really positive results. And then obviously increasing the physical education classes and the curriculum they have for bicycle safety lessons as well. And then creating low-income membership options for those who might not have the financial resources but still want to use this as a transportation amenity. And then offering cash options for those who do not have access to a credit card. Typically, you will need a credit card in order to rent these bikes, and so offering a cash option is a great way to encourage people who don't have access to that to still be able to use it. And then low-cost memberships, as I mentioned. And then finally, an offline renting option. You also typically need a smartphone to use these, but there are ways to maneuver around that by offering different options through different stores or local businesses that are able to rent the bikes other ways as well. So this is our timeline for the rest of 2019. August 23rd, we have a deadline to sign a non-binding MOU for all of our organizations and municipalities to participate in the opening round in funding. And what the MOU is basically saying is that you're interested in participating and you would like to take a look at the RFP that we release on August 30th before it gets released. And then you're also able to offer comments on that RFP and see if you have any suggestions or comments that you might have, and then we'll take those into consideration before we release the RFP and start taking in bids for the companies. In September, like I said, we'll release that RFP to select our bike sharing provider, and that bike sharing provider will be county-wide. We were only going to use one bike sharing company for the entire county. This allows us to create a very cohesive network, and so that you're able to take a bike to any station within the county, check out a bike there, or return a bike there as well. And so in October, we will select that company after a couple of rounds of interviews as well. So we're going to do an in-person interview with our top 3 companies. We'll also be able to test the bikes that they offer them, that they offer us. And then after that, we'll start drafting the network design based on the interested municipalities and interested parties. And then in November, we're going to start holding public input meetings. The county will be a part of that as well, and we hope that each participating municipality will obviously be part of that to educate their residents and visitors on what bike sharing is and what it isn't, and then finding ideal station locations as well. And then in 2020, January 1st is the deadline to sign a contract for the municipality to participate in this, and then that's when we will finalize financial obligations for the participants. So the more stations and the more participants we have, the lower the cost will be. So we encourage everyone to participate, this time around rather than just waiting for next year to see how it goes, because it'll be more successful and it'll be at a lower cost for everybody. February, we'll finalize our network locations. And then in March, we will secure advertising and finalizing sponsors for the system. In June, we're really going to ramp up on our marketing and outreach efforts. And then hopefully by August, we will have construction and implementation of all the stations in the county. And these are just some different resources that I encourage everybody to check out once I send out the presentation, just to give you some more background on bike sharing and how we kind of have taken some guidance from other case studies throughout the country and throughout the region on how we plan on constructing our system. And with that, I will take some questions. And there's my contact information up there as well.
Questions or comments from anyone? Nick?
Are any adjacent counties doing this right now? Do you know?
Yeah, so McHenry County just launched on June 15th, and we have interest from Will County and Kendall County to actually be a part of our system with our, in DuPage County. The western, Winfield, West Chicago, the western parts of DuPage County would like to come in as well. And then the northern cities in Kendall County, like Oswego and Yorkville, are also very interested in coming in with ours. It's our hope that we're able to actually kind of bridge the gap between our county system and the McHenry County system as well, so you can actually take a bike all the way from Aurora and go all the way to the northern extents of the McHenry County system in Richmond. So there's going to take a little bit of cohesion and a little bit of communication between our two counties, but we're very hopeful that we can make that happen.
So do you need buy-in from all the municipalities within the county or a certain percentage or?
I mean, all we need is 10 stations. That's all that most companies require in order to start a system. And then after that, it's just as much as you want to buy in. I believe we will get that 10 station, minimum very easily. And then it just depends on, which cities come in, and then the southernmost city will come in, and then the one north of that will come in, and like a domino effect almost.
Have you made any kind of determination for Batavia, like how many stations you would recommend here?
I try not to make recommendations like that. I will say each station you should anticipate costing about $10,000 each, with about a $3,000 installation fee. And so based on that, I would recommend reverse engineering and see how much you want to spend and then work backwards from there.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, let me just jump in here. At the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, which Ryan and I attend in some regularity together because he goes in with me, we're looked upon as kind of one of the models of the entire Chicagoland region for the amount of off-street bicycle trails we got. We're kind of one of the, I've been jokingly told, we're the circle interchange of Kane County here because we've got the bicycle trails on both sides of the river, unlike many of the neighboring municipalities. And we've got access to several of these trail networks, the Great Western and the one runs out the old Chicago Roar and Elgin line into Brookfield Zoo. There's a lot of great potential here. And so I think we certainly, of all the places where you want to put these, you want to put them where there's people wanting to go and traffic. We have a lot of visitors come to Kane County because they like to come and specifically ride the Fox River. So I think it's, as far as a financial obligation, it's somewhat of a no-brainer here that we should get the ridership. And, I would certainly encourage us to have at least one station, maybe two, but, as Ryan said, let's kind of go backwards and see how the demand is and see where it is. But, we've got everything in place here to make this work. And I think we could be a model for the rest of the region. I've had other mayors in here wanting to rode their bicycles in here to see how Batavia operates this. And this bridge outside the door here is really quite a regional model as to how you tie things together and tie it into a business community. And then you have bicycle shops building along it. And it's like having, rest stops or, truck stops. It's only their bicycle stops along a major interchange. And so we've kind of got that in a miniature scale, and we're fortunate that those who run those bicycle shops do a great job, and they're, people who know what they're doing and how to do it. And so we got a lot going for us in this arena, and certainly something that I think Batavia can take great pride in. So much of our success, I will tell you, I think is because we got a lot of this off the street. This is on the old railroad right-of-ways and paths and other stuff that, the cars and competing with the bicycle for the road, and it makes it safer, and specifically all this stuff along the river is just ideal. I can't begin to tell you where Ryan and I go. Every member of that staff, I think, has been out here riding the bike trail to see what this is all about, because we're kind of looked upon as as I say, kind of the regional model. So I would encourage the council to buy into this and let us be one of the leaders, because with Ryan, he kind of overseeing it at the kind of the regional levels for the county. We got a top drawer person here who knows what they're doing, and it's not something I'm shaky about that this isn't going to be handled in the right way.
Dan?
Do you have any data regarding ridership during particular months? I ask because your timeline shows it'll be the end of the summer by the time you're ready to get started, and then all of a sudden there's going to be snow on the ground.
Yeah.
Is that the right time? Is that the right time to launch, or is it
right?
better
It
to
could
wait
be
till
snowing in
this
September. You really never know around here. So, it's ideal. Ideally, you want to do June 1st launch for this type of thing, so you get the full bike riding months. We have a deadline of August 1st, I will say, and then we could launch before then if we have everybody ready to go. So. We usually want to give about 14 months for this type of thing, and that's kind of what we gave ourselves, But if we're ready to go, we will launch before then, but August 1st at the latest.
Great.
Mark?
So I'll play the role of a skeptic here for a little bit. I love to bike. I love the idea, and I haven't had time to read through all the other resources, do my own research. In Chicago, wildly successful, in major cities wildly successful, and so what's the data in suburban areas where it's a haul to get to, maybe not from here, not as bad to get to public transportation, but also from the aspect of the using the trails. We got a great trail system, but what kind of usage is Chicago or other suburban areas would be a better example? What kind of usage are they seeing from a recreational standpoint? Because obviously in Chicago it's heavily used for transport to get to and from work. So I'm just curious about the other aspect of it, that I've never seen it in an aspect of recreation necessarily.
Sure. So the one example in the region that I would point to is Kankakee County. And so they have, it's basically entirely recreational. There's a lot of people riding on Saturdays and Sundays and after 5 p.m. That's where they see the bulk of their ridership coming from. And also in Chicago, they see a fair amount as well. You know, on holiday weekends, you see people taking the Lakeshore Trail, and there's still a fair amount of recreational riding. It's just that they also have the opportunity to use it for public transportation, use it as that first mile, last mile as well. With that being said, this is still going to be a public transportation assistance as well. Geneva is going to put a station at their metro station, and so that is an option for people to take it, you know, from near City Hall up to Geneva, and rather than having to drive their car up there and, you know, paying to park it there every day. I can also give you some other case studies as well if you'd like to look into that, but there are some very successful instances where it has been used as primary recreation. Also nationwide, about 60% of people who use bike share also have a private bike as well at home. They just prefer to have the convenience of it and have the ability to jump on a bike whenever they want. If they're just strolling past City Hall, they want to jump on a bike, take it down the Fox River Trail for 30 minutes. Now they have that option to do that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Tony?
Yeah, I'm fully supportive. I think it's a fantastic idea. But one question I do have you gotten input from any of the other bike shop owners in the area? I know we have a couple here. There's a few in Geneva. You did hit on it there a little bit in your answer to Mark's question. What are their thoughts on this?
So the bike shops are very positive. I know Matt Knowles from All Spoked Up fairly well. And he's right there. Yeah. And he actually, I believe, still has the contract for the current Zaxxer stations in Aurora. And so there's typically a very good relationship between the bike share and the bike shops. The bike share company will usually pick one local shop to do the maintenance as well and to store the bikes during the winter. And so they usually bid that out to a local company rather than having to bring in their own guys, and they know the lay of the land a lot better. I would say biking will only increase with bike share stations and a bike share system. So it's only going to increase the amount of bikes that are people coming into their stores to buy bikes because they see more people biking. It's now more comfortable to do so. There's going to be more bike lanes because cities will see the need to, you know, build better infrastructure, which will inherently increase the ridership, both with bike sharing system and your private bikes as well. So it's a win-win, I think, for everybody around, whether you're taking your own personal bike out or bike share bikes as well.
Elliot?
I'm not sure if this is a question that you can answer or maybe somebody from the Bicycle Commission can answer. I remember a little while back ago we went through a presentation where Batavia was awarded a bronze level for the bicycle-friendly League of American Bicyclists, the bicycle-friendly community. Does this bar into any of the factors towards either the bronze level or the next level to either solidify or help promote to the next level?
Yes, it does.
Scott?
The CYA question, who's held liable for safety issues or accidents or?
That I don't have an intimate knowledge on. That's going to be based on your contract with the company. So each municipality will sign a contract with the bike share company that we pick. Mm-hmm. And so that is where you negotiate and talk about insurance. That's where you talk about, you know, how much fare box you want back for these user fees and things like that. And so that would be a bike share company question, and I can't really speak to that, unfortunately.
And thank you. And do you have data on safety in terms of, as these are used, you know, the rate of accidents?
Right. So sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
So the big concern is that people aren't wearing helmets when they're taking out bike shares because they don't have a readily available helmet because they're just jumping on a bike and going somewhere. But what they found is that the data shows that despite not wearing helmets, they're still just as safe or safer than taking your private bike out with a helmet because you're going slower, you're on a bigger bike, and cars are more aware of you because you're typically in more busier areas and more dense areas. You're also about 3 times less likely to get injured on a bike share bike than you are on a personal bike as well. And so these are very safe bikes. If you've ever ridden one, they're bulky almost, but they're still a good ride. But they are designed that way for a reason.
Anybody else?
One quick question. Is there typically an age limit to be able to ride them?
So yeah, you typically have to be over 18 in order to rent a bike. And you also need a credit card as well, typically.
Abby?
I have one quick comment. Thank you very much for all of this. The next Fox Valley Sustainability Network Forum is at the end of the month on July 24th, and it's on transportation. I believe you might even be speaking at it again.
Yes.
And there might be a representation from other counties that are doing something similar. Active Transportation Alliance will be there. CMAP will be there presenting kind of on what the Capitol bill says, what bike sharing programs are being rolled out, other advocacy and education initiatives, infrastructure, a whole wide gamut of transportation issues. So if anybody would like to go with me, I will be there on the 24th. It's in Aurora at the Prisco Center at 10 a.m.
Well, Mark?
One more question, because it's still, I've heard it multiple times, and I'm trying to understand the physics of it. Why? Because it's bulkier, is it safer?
Well, because you're not going as fast, and if you get hit an SUV, you're more likely to, survive that crash than you are in a smaller vehicle. So when you get hit with a bigger bike, it's the same physics. If the car hits you, you are less likely to, 1, go over the handlebars, and 2, there's going to be less damage and less reverberation through the entire bike into your body.
Okay. I'm going to look that up myself.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, fact check me on that one, please do.
I just don't understand. If you get knocked off a bike, you get knocked off a bike.
Right.
It's.
If head injuries are pretty much going to be fatal at almost any speed, especially if you're not wearing a helmet. A lot of times these bikes are being ridden on the sidewalk as well, which is another problem, another issue entirely, but that also increases your safety. So that's one of the components as well.
Are these same companies, I know Chicago just started the electric scooter, not successfully from what I understand. Are these same companies doing that program as well? Or are they just, we're doing bikes and somebody else is doing e-scooters?
So Uber and Lyft are now kind of cornering the market on just basically anything mobility, anything you can rent on a street basically. So they actually own, Lyft actually owns the Divvy system. They're the ones providing those bikes. And Uber is now jumping into electric bikes, scooters, and docked bikes. And so to answer your question, yes, they are doing that. We will not be looking at anything but docked bikes. It is up to the municipalities if you want to have scooters, if you want to have anything else. We will not be doing anything like that. The political headaches and the administrative headaches that come along with basically anything but a pedal bike is just too much to speak in front of you guys and try to convince you to do. So I'm not even going to try to touch that.
Wait, are you saying it's something you don't want to do because of the political nightmare? Do you think it's a worthwhile endeavor?
I think anytime you can get out of a car and have a safe way to get to where you're going is a good endeavor and a good investment. I do not think that, mid-20s people like myself riding drunk on an electric scooter is a good idea. I think that there's a lot of misuse, and I think with any public transportation option, when you first roll it out, there's going to be a lot of transition, and that's what we've seen with the scooters, but the suburbs aren't ready for scooters.
Well, I think
Stick around for the.
I think this is something we should get behind. I support it. I know the Transportation Alliance, we won an award from them a few years back when we did the streetscape on River Street. With the Woon Earth, it was a shared street. It slowed traffic down. Everyone had a right to the road. It wasn't just an automobile roadway any longer, and this fits right into that. I know Alderman Beck is, endeavoring, she's putting forth a lot of information regarding healthy lifestyle choices, and this is a healthy lifestyle choice. So I think for the residents, it's a good thing for the city of Batavia, so I would support something like this. Dan?
So our action tonight is to just sign a memo of understanding, is that?
Yeah, I think it's, if we do a vote, it's non-binding.
Yes,
but,
that's correct.
It's a non-binding vote, it's just moving forward, taking a step forward, and hopefully we continue to move in that direction.
Correct. So speaking to that as well, the MOU, you can sign the MOU and not participate later on if you decide that it's too much, from a financial standpoint or a political standpoint or feasibility or anything like that. Conversely, if you don't sign the MOU, you can still participate as well. The advantage is that you get to see the RFP and you get to talk to some of these companies before we decide on which one we decide on.
The other aspect of the MOU, a reason to sign it, is that the greater interest that we can show from more communities within Kane County means we're going to have a greater amount of interest from these companies to put forth their best deal possible.
Yep. We released the MOU this morning. We already have 2 people that signed it. The Forest Reserve of King County and the Gale Board and Library in Elgin have already signed. So we're looking for more signees, and we hope that Batavia is one of them.
So I will say we have the Bike Commission, seems like in the audience. Would you like to come up and say anything?
I'm Joanne Spitz. I'm on the Bicycle Commission, and I've known Ryan since he started on the job. He is a great, attentive, focused professional. He comes to all our meetings now. No one's ever done that before from the Department of Transportation. And he helps us, and he guides us, and he will do everything he says he's going to do. So the Bicycle Commission is in complete support of the bike share program. We've been talking about this for quite a while now, and we've talked about the locations that we would recommend, and someone asked how many. 1 would be good, 4 or 5 would be really good. So our top locations were right here outside City Hall, where the mayor said is where everyone comes through our town. Second would be on River Street, we talked about that. 3 would be the library, and 4 and 5 could be the Batavia Park District buildings. So there's a lot more. We would be willing to help with sponsorships and finding locations, and really just doing everything. Community support, we think we could find it. I actually contacted someone I know at Aldi today. So we all have really good ideas. I think this is a win-win for the whole county, and I would hate for Batavia not to be part of it since it's going up from Elgin to Montgomery. And I think it's really important, being a bicycle-friendly community, that we support this. So,
Dan?
I actually have a follow-up question regarding that. So you named places that are all downtown, and from his presentation, he said we couldn't have them, within a couple of miles of each other. Do you guys have any thoughts on where we could put a second or third station within the city that wouldn't be focused on the downtown? Had you talked about that?
Yeah, we talked about the Quarry, Funway. We talked to Abby about the Batavia Apartments. They have a bike share program at Fermi Lab. It would be nice to connect it all, but Fermi bike share really aren't supposed to leave Fermi. Aldi headquarters or Aldi store. So yeah, we do possibly Delnor, which I know is Geneva, but they support all the Tri-Cities. So I think there are a lot of opportunities. We were thinking if you're only going to do one, it should be downtown. But if you want to support more, we will be happy to do some research and find some more further away.
Yeah, I was thinking it would be great to have them located where the communities that can most use them would be nice. So somewhere out by Kirk Road, it connects to the trail system there. Would maybe connect to Fermi. I didn't realize they had their own share system.
Yeah, they did it last year. It's very successful.
Well, I'm glad you said the apartments. I think that's a great place to put it. A lot of those folks do not have transportation, and this will get them to our downtown. And I forget who I was speaking with, but I was speaking with you, Abby, just at Saturday, that a lot of the folks don't participate in all the benefits we have in our downtown with Main Street and the farmers market, because it's just a long walk down. So this would give them the opportunity to participate in our community and bring people together. I just think that would be a wonderful place to start. And so I would definitely support that. And I really do look forward to possibly a meeting with the Bike Commission to continue this forward.
The Bike Commission, actually, we do have bikes for Batavia. We've given away over 300 bikes, and a lot of them are for families at the Batavia apartments. And we've talked to them about doing bike racks. They will need a little coaxing. They had a van for 4 years, and they decided they didn't need that anymore. So there's some work to be done, but it would be very beneficial.
Thank you, Joanne.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
So what do we do tonight?
I think we'll do a vote.
Right.
And it's just non-binding. It's just, we're interested to move forward with this.
And then we'll have it on the next city council meeting so that we too can be among the first to adopt the MOU.
And just one more point, you are able to move these stations as well, so we talked a little bit about the location, so you can move them if you decide that one doesn't have the ridership you're looking for, you're able to just pick it up, move it to another location.
So do we need a motion?
I move we sign the MOU.
Motion by Malay, second by Chanzit. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. We'll put that on the agenda and speak about that.
Please.
Thank you.
Thank you all for having me.
Yes, Nick.
Laura, once that's done next Monday, right, we sign it?
Yes.
What do you foresee the process internally for us, making decisions on locations, things like that? August is right around the corner.
I think that's August of 2020.
And that's
that's
just,
the year.
right, that's just for the RFP.
We're about a year out.
Right, we're about a year out, so we'll certainly have more meetings about the ideal locations.
For government.
Somebody's excited about the bike share program.
Okay, so we'll go to item number 6, ordinance 19-49, annexing parts of the old Burlington northern right-of-way between Bernadette Lane and Millview Drive. Nick, I believe you have this?
Yeah, this is part of cleaning up the islands in the city, more of it, a little odd in that it's strips across the properties because of the Burlington northern right-of-way, so I'll turn it over to Scott.
Thank you. This is the continuing effort to annex the various islands that are throughout the city. And this is another area that's a little bit unique from some of the other ones we've done so far in that it involves properties that are primarily already in the city limits. The only exception is the rear parts of the property being the 50 feet on each side of the former railroad right-of-way. So the various plats are in here. Essentially the property owners had either acquired the rights of way over a period of time and let's see if I can rotate this the right way. And this map kind of shows, if you can see it, I think it's in your packet though, shows the various parcels that are being proposed for annexation. So we did reach out to the property owners asking for voluntary annexations. Of the 16 property owners, we did receive 5 petitions to annex from the property owners. So we did receive some, but not all obviously for these property owners. So these properties are, like I said, are already mostly in the city limits already. These are essentially the backyards. There are some properties that have improvements like pools and sheds and things like that in that area, but most of them are actually lawns. So this would just bring the property owners into the city limits. The impact on them from a tax standpoint is going to be very minimal because these are essentially remnant parcels from the county standpoint. So you're seeing somewhere around $4 to $6 additional property tax just from the annexation is the impact. So
Scott, what's the process now? We've got 5 of 16. That leaves 11 out there.
Yeah, and so what we've done in these circumstances is we try to get as many of the voluntary petitions and see how it would break down. In this case, there wasn't any contiguous grouping. They were kind of scattered, the ones that we had. So what we do in that case is then we do the notice that we have tonight for the public meeting and then do what's called the involuntary annexation to just go ahead and proceed with the annexation of all the properties at once.
How long does that process take?
It will be done, assuming that the city council votes or the committee votes on it tonight, we would have it scheduled for the city council, the next city council for approval.
So they would all be included?
Correct.
Oh,
Yes.
perfect. Okay.
Mark.
So remind me on the letter that goes out, is no response a no? Or do they have to respond one way or another?
No, they don't have to, well, there's three responses. They can either submit a petition annex, they can say no, or they can just ignore us. So we have a variety of that. So of all of the 16, we received actual petitions annex from only 5. So everybody else either said, no, I'm not going to do it, or that they didn't respond at all.
So did we get no's? Or, so we did get no's. How many no's did we get out of that?
I think only 1, maybe 2 out of this grouping.
Just to kind of clarify, I guess, for just understanding purposes, these backyards that are in the right-of-way, I mean, by the addresses, these are all already within the city limit properties, so it's kind of like their backyard, or at least a portion of it, which they're already using, because you said there's sheds and a couple of others on it, are unincorporated sections. So it's not as though their entire property is going from unincorporated to incorporated.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, most of them already, if you call for emergency services or anything like that, they're all on city utilities.
Right.
So, they're already essentially everything's city at this point.
Tony?
In the old right-of-way that was there, is there parts that have not been acquired by the property?
There's only one parcel in there that actually is still owned by Burlington Northern. Every other one is owned by the adjacent owners.
Okay. And how long are we talking? When did that happen?
It's happened over a period of years. I think the railroad officially abandoned it in the 1960s, and then it was conveyed off in I want to say the 1980s. And then it was, there's a private entity that owned it for a while, and then they sold it to individual property owners over a period of time.
Anybody else?
Why would somebody say no?
Lady in the audience.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Maybe we'll find out.
Ma'am, would you like to come up and speak, please? Can you come to the microphone, please?
We own one of those railroad properties. When we received the original letter, we said that we respectfully declined. When we received the last letter, we finally received what they perceived to be that piece of property behind our place. We had sent, in response to the first letter, a copy of the Burlington Northern, it was called an exhibit to us in addition to the contract for us to purchase that property. It was listed as 50 by 100 feet. Everyone would get a piece of property exactly the same distance as their rear piece of property, 50 feet to the center of the railroad. When we received the last letter, we now had a copy of what you perceived to be our ownership, and it was incorrect. It's incorrect to the fact that it reduces our back line by about 95 feet. So it required us to go to the courthouse and to spend some time up there trying to re-establish what we had proof of back to 1967. We had to show
a survey.
A survey. Now, the survey that was handed with that example was done by a man in DeKalb who never even came to our house to look at what he was surveying. He never really looked at anything. All he did was went up to the courthouse and got the information that was incorrect. So we spent the day trying to fix it.
The lot lines that you have shown on the letter runs right through my storage barn. So we come down to make sure these lines are more in line with our survey, because we don't want to have someone purchase a piece of property from the city that's next to us and then come over and take half of our storage barn.
May we get your names for the record,
Yes.
and then also the address of the property to which you're referring?
Yes,
Thank you.
it's Robert and Jean Porter.
You spell that?
1210 Brandywine Circle. And we wouldn't have come here except We sent the information with the return of the first letter, and no one even cared. We actually came down and discussed the fact that the city owns the large strand from our property to the south, and there's weeds and trees and poison ivy and all kinds of things, and we asked them to clean it up. You own it, fix it. And then nobody has come out and done anything.
Including a big maple tree that's overhanging my storage barn and just ready to get into the Commonwealth Edison lines.
I understand the reason you want to purchase is to get the more taxes. I think we figured out the difference in our tax bill is going to be someplace between $4 and $10. I don't know if it's worth it to you, but it was worth it to us to make sure that 2 years or 3 years from now, when we're trying to sell the property to someone else, that we don't have to go through hours of straightening the mess out that can be created by assuming that all your lines were correct and it went through an annexation. When we were told it would be very hard to correct it then. So that's all we came for.
So Lo, you'll reach out to these folks?
Yes, and I believe Scott also.
Scott will also, okay?
I can address it a little bit. I've spoken to them before. Essentially, the document that's in front of us today is the annexation document. It's not establishing property ownership. So this shows what the property lines of the city boundaries are as we have annexed so far. So this does not mean that they do or don't own any of this property. It's just basically saying we're going to annex these areas. I've had some conversation with them. We're aware of the discrepancy in the property lines. And what I had talked to them about was that one of the things we could do just to fully clarify it is to somehow do some type of a quick claim deed to clarify the line and address that situation. We can't do it via this procedure here, but we would be able to do that separately.
You're assuming that a quick claim deed will do it. And that's true. If you acknowledge that you only have 50 feet on that south line and that you have only so many feet or you do have more on the north line of Tim Dahlman's property. But if you assume that you have the 50.2 feet on the south, that's going to be incorrect. It will go into the file up at the courthouse, and then we go to file to sell, and somebody wants that mortgage all cleaned up, and they can't do it. Not without coming back, all the way back through to this day when you annex. And it has to be correct. So it should be correct at the courthouse if you check now, but you need to make sure that your end is correct.
We have spoken with the county and showed them our survey, and they said, oh, we can go in and just tweak this line. That's nice, but it didn't filter back to what you guys are doing.
Yeah, if they've updated the GIS, because again, these are not surveys, the GIS is just kind of a depiction of the property lines, but it's not necessarily 100% accurate. But if they've since done that, I can certainly talk to the county about it and make sure that that is the case. Otherwise, the other option would be to do a quit claim deed to just fully establish the correct property lines.
Cleaner.
So thank you for your.
Okay, thank you.
Scott?
We'll make sure that
Yes.
okay.
Can I ask a question? Just
Go ahead, no, please do.
Just for clarification, in the procedure tonight, we are just establishing these are part of city versus county. It doesn't necessarily draw any lines or.
Does not change property ownership or anything like that, or property lines, correct?
But you have some direction.
Yep.
That if we need to do some quick claims, go ahead and do them.
Yep.
Okay.
And we'll have to come back to the council to officially approve of all that, but the procedure we have to follow, so, and that's fine.
Alderman Saron?
I would make a motion that we approve the city council approval of ordinance 1949 annexing parts of the Old Burlington Northern right-of-way between Bernadette Lane and Millview Drive.
Second.
Motion by Saron, second by Chanzit. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Go to item number 7, Resolution 19-078-R, executing a ground space lease agreement with New Singular Wireless PCS for 200 North Radant Road. Mike, I believe you have this?
Yes, this is a lease agreement between the City of Batavia and New Singular Wireless. I guess this is our second go-around with them. It'll bring $120,000 of revenue into the city that we currently don't have. I'll let Gary highlight the lease from here.
Thank you. Sorry, I just wanted to pull up the aerial photo too. I figured it might be the easiest way to describe this. There we go. Doesn't need to be very, there we go. So this is the northeast corner of our building, and I'll come back to that in a moment. We previously had, back in 2014, approved a ground lease agreement with New Singular Wireless. That agreement was then subsequently terminated by them in 2016 due to the fact that they at that time had no longer interest in utilizing ground space. Jump ahead to this year, and now they're back again saying they would like to utilize ground space. And so they came back and said that, normally when they start a new lease, it certainly wouldn't be at the level that it used to be at. They get to start back at the bottom again, and we pushed back and said, no, that's not the case. We're going to start this lease as if it began on 2014, and then we just had all the escalations in there, and then come 2019, this is what it would be today, and that's the value that's listed in this memo. That's the $2,000. So that's where we came to the dollar value from. Attorney Drendel's office is reviewing this document, but it's basically the exact same document that was approved by City Council in 2014. The only difference being a change to the dimensions of the leased area and the fact that the starting rent is now this value, $2,000, as opposed to what it was in 2014. So besides that, all the other terms and conditions in the lease agreement are exactly what was approved by City Council back in 2014. And then again, I'll go back to the aerial photo. Really, they're proposing to lease space right here. So here's the fence line where the control building is for the tower. It's hard to see it here. That's a little easier. So it's not any space that we're using. It's basically just space that right now is sitting vacant, and the city will then realize money from to allow them to lease it. So.
Any negatives towards leasing this space for the city?
Anytime you lease away city space, you are taking away your ability to use that space for the long term, at least 5-year chunks at a time, because these are all renewable 5-year contracts. I don't have any reason to believe that this particular location we would be needing in the next 5 years, 10 or 15 years. There was a company at one point in time, I'm going to slide over here. There was a company at one point in time, I'm going to just zoom out so you guys can get a better perspective. There's the Salt Dome. And so you can kind of know there's our warehouse in the back, and all of you have been over there. This little space right here at one time, a company wanted to take this entire green space and utilize this. We had to hem and haw a little bit about that because that would, our man doors right here, that starts to kind of get a little closer to our operations. And that was back also around the same time frame, 2014, 2012, somewhere in that range. And that company eventually decided not to go forward. But that's an example of something where we weren't quite sure we wanted to do.
Right.
They chose not to go forward. But in this case, with this little, sorry, the tower's in the way. In this case, with this little portion of the property right here, we don't see any issue with it. And we feel it's beneficial to the city to lease it and gain the revenue.
Any other questions? Anybody care to make a motion?
I'll make.
You know what? I do have a question. I'm sorry. Just, you're asking us to vote on this, and we haven't gotten the full report back from the attorney.
So you have the draft that, again, was approved. Essentially, the framework was, well, all the language. It wasn't just a framework. All the language was approved by council in 2014. That's the draft that you guys are looking at tonight. We've asked the attorney to have his final comments in prior to the council meeting. So if anything comes up between now and the council, we'll certainly inform you, and if we need to, we can pull it off.
We can pull it, okay.
But we're anticipating, given the fact that it's all the same, we're probably not going to have any comments, and so
Okay.
that's why we went forward.
Wanted to cover that.
Yep.
Okay.
There is one error in there, though. Bill McGrath is still listed as administrator.
Yes.
Besides that, we'll get that one fixed.
And one other comment, when would this lease start, Gary?
So the start date, that's kind of what happened with the 2014 agreement, was we entered into the agreement, then they have an option to commence with payments along with construction, and the terms are outlined in the agreement. So they do have the ability to wait to begin construction on that, but they're starting, basically, we will start payments as soon as they do that, so.
Okay.
I'm going on a limb, because we don't know their private business operations, but I'm going on a limb to say that they're probably gaining this additional space for the incoming 5G technology, would be my guess.
Okay. Motion by Meitzler, second by Malay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nays?
Ayes have it.
Ayes have it.
We'll put that on consent.
Yeah, I'll get 2 bike docks a year with that for the next 5 years.
Okay, so we'll go to item number 8, ordinance 19-47, establishing an amended special service area number 61 for the One Washington Place development. And Alderman Chanza, you have this?
Yeah, so this is a continuation of what we already approved back in May. This raises the SSA levy from $10 per $100 of EAV on the One North Washington property up to up to $15 per $100 of EAV. We are the landowner, so we had to notice ourselves.
Indeed, we did.
Assuming that we don't object to our own filing, we should be okay with this then, right?
Yes, we sent out the mailing and received it the same day, so exactly one letter.
Someone had to sign for it.
And we did have to sign for it certified, so we spent $6.60 to mail the certified letter because that's required under statute, so.
This just brings it in line with the RDA.
Correct. That is exactly it. So the terms of the RDA changed in relation to the levy and then the term, and we already did the proposing ordinance earlier this year, and so this is the establishing ordinance. We will have a public hearing on July 15th meeting, and then once we close that public hearing, you can vote on the ordinance, and then the objection period, in case any of the property owners decide to object, would expire in September. So if the city decides they're going to object to the SSA, we'll know that by September.
And just to review, what does this tighten up with the RDA? It increases the dollar amount and also changes that exemption for when?
The time frame, right. It actually said that once the SSA, once the TIF expires, that then the SSA would expire. We've now allowed that to extend to an indefinite period of time if we need to do it. And again, we don't have to levy under the SSA. It just gives us that option.
But it means more protection for us in case we need it.
Correct. Yes.
Does anyone have any questions? Otherwise, I would make a motion to recommend to City Council that we.
We do have a couple of questions.
Go for it.
Just, is the developer okay with this?
Yes.
He's on board with that?
Yes, because that was part of the approved redevelopment agreement.
Yes.
And so when we have this SSA in place and then we transfer the ownership of the property to the developer, that SSA is still valid?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So then I would make a motion, we recommend to council ordinance 19-47, establishing an amended SSA number 61 for One Washington Place development.
Second.
Motion by Chanzit, second by Ewa. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We'll probably do the consent agenda.
That can't be on consent.
Oh,
That'll be on the
cannot? Okay.
That'll be, we have a public hearing and then we'd have to vote on the
Okay,
ordinance,
that's
so.
not on consent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item would be item number 9, ordinance 19-48, revising Title 3, Chapter 3, Section 3-3-15, 3-3-16, 3-3-18, and 3-3-27 of the Batavia Municipal Code, creating a Park District liquor license. Alderman Chanzit?
Right, so this is updating our code to create a new liquor license then for our Park District, and the chief is here to help present this.
Yes, essentially, the Park District approached us earlier this year, late winter, early springtime, and requested that we consider building out a classification for the Park District to hold a liquor license within the city of Batavia. We met with the Park District team. We also met with the city attorney, got an idea of what they wanted to do, kind of outlined on page 2 of my memorandum. And Kevin Drendel drafted a revision and building out a classification, Class K license for the Park District to hold both a retail liquor license with a built-in carry-in option or component as well. So essentially, the high points of the Class K would be that only properties owned by the district that have a formal structure in the shape of a building with 4 walls, a ceiling, and a restroom facility. The carrying capability be built into it as opposed to being standalone. For only private party activities, that means somebody rents a facility from the Park District and they bring liquor in the carrying capacity. Regardless of whether it's a Park District event or is a private event that's contracted with the Park District by a private party, oversight would be the responsibility of the Park District through an employee who is BASA trained to be on site during all liquor service. Third-party vendors who conduct liquor activities on the district properties would also have to be individually licensed with the Class G license as well still. Outdoor adjuncts can be applied separately with the individual liquor license applications for each one of the buildings or properties the district designates as potential license facilities. Liquor will be served in accordance with the liquor code. The Class K licenses must also be licensed corresponding state of Illinois liquor license. The Quarry Beach here was prohibited. We had talked about it. The Park District were a little bit disappointed about that, but they understand our concerns. We also did receive some feedback from Alderman Knopp between the time we submitted this and this evening that he requested we expand the language to include any facility which includes a pool, water park, or similar attraction for any kind of future build out that would have some kind of a water feature. We're just not comfortable with that right now. We told them we would review it after a period of time and maybe revisit it, but we're all pretty strong consensus that we didn't want to have liquor service there in conjunction with the Quarry Park activities. And then once, if the committee and council recommend and approve, that each applicant or each property designated for liquor service would have a separate application. So in addition to the current activities that the Park District does and we license every year through the special events license process, this would streamline from an administrative standpoint on the police department's background investigation side for the licensing of the activities the Park District conducts. We have found the Park District to be a conscientious partner as far as liquor service in our historical relationship with them. They also wanted to expand or enhance some of the activities they have at other properties through liquor service. And one of the things that came up was like paint and sip activities at their Park District main property, which they cannot conduct with liquor service right now. Because there's no provision in the code for a license for the Park District. So that was really their I guess the impetus for this classification.
So I like the restrictions that I saw in place in the ordinance. I did have a question though. So Engstrom Park technically does not have a building in it. So yes. My concern was, is there like some slippery slope here where there could be a beer garden there or something with
No, 4 walls, a roof, and a restroom facility. So basically a building. Any property that has a building on it, and that was one of the things the Park District wanted to do. They wanted to have some, they were very expansive in their initial requests. We pared it down to where we thought we were all fairly comfortable with it. So open air liquor service would be conducted with restricted fencing and would require an outdoor adjunct. The Engstrom Park property would not meet those requirements because it doesn't have a structure.
And I guess I would also note this is the this is the most authority we've ever granted with a single license quite like this to another taxing body or another authority. But you say our history with them has shown that they are worthy of every license we've ever approved.
Correct.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions?
Should we phrase it to be a permanent building? Because what if they put up a tent with 4 walls?
A porta potty.
So
Right, well, this was the language recommended by the city attorney. So I guess we could add that language to enhance it.
Yeah, that's the only, if we're worried about that, I mean, I'm not sure that I am necessarily, as long as, we're following all the Bassett training and all the stuff that, a establishment would have to do, but Windmill City Fest, I don't know if that has, I can't remember if there's walls on that if it rains, but then all of a sudden that's a building. And, I mean, we have a liquor license for that, but if somebody did something out at Engstrom Park and they put up a tent.
Right.
Is that something you're comfortable with? Do you want that?
That is not the intent, nor is it the desire of the city to license liquor service inside tents. And I don't believe the Park District would try to make that maneuver either.
I just want, as liquor commissioner, I just want to add, there is a heightened degree of sensitivity when you get to a place like Engstrom Park and you want to have liquor. And I say that for a variety of reasons. One, you're right across the street from the high school, but more interestingly, you share that property, the parking, there's bathrooms and everything else, with a very, very prominent historic church in town that has some strong views about alcohol. And so I think we would be in a real bit of a community debate should we decide we wanted to bring, I've had to have this conversation a couple times with the fireworks committee people who wanted to bring alcohol into the fireworks a couple times, and conferring with the police department, we were not in favor of the idea because we think it's a family activity and we're trying to keep it that way. And we've had other suggestions of people wanting to do things at Engstrom Park. I even had one time had some folks wanted to move Windmill City Days out there. And I said, somehow or another, I got to believe that the beer tent and the church on Sunday morning, both open at the same time, are not going to work together. And so we've kind of draw that idea to a close. So, I think that this council historically has been very sensitive toward those types of issues, and I think this was written, I conferred with the city attorney and the police department about this, and I think we tried to write this in a way that reflected that sensitivity.
I agree. And in our research, this is not an outlier. We looked around in the region, and this is not atypical of other Park District entities, just based on their mission, that this is something that's fairly normal. Questions, anyone else? Okay, if not, I would move that we recommend to council the revisions of ordinance number 19-48, revising Title 3, Chapter 3, Sections 3-315, 3-316, 3-318, 3-327 of the municipal code, creating a Park District liquor license. Sorry about that.
Second.
Motion by Chanzit, second by Malay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
The answer. Thorough.
We'll do that consent agenda.
Can we?
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Item number 10, Resolution 19-077-R, authorizing change order number 8 with Williams Brothers Construction Incorporated for the Phase 1 wastewater treatment plant rehabilitation project. Scott?
I got it.
You have this.
Yes, that is exactly that. It is our change order number 8 for the wastewater treatment plant. I'll let you take it, Byron.
Basically, or essentially, this is really kind of a big bag of leftover things that have been negotiated and talked down and redone and over the course of basically the entire project. So this one kind of is a big bag of mixed tricks and lots of little numbers in it and a few bigger numbers, but yeah, that's all it is. It's kind of a cleanup change order. There will be one more change order, the final change order, that is being worked on now, but we haven't finally accepted the project yet. So that one will probably be lengthier. Because I'm sure there will be some negotiations that have to be involved in that one. So,
Any questions?
You know what? The one that had the ceiling, the sprinkler pipe had to be relocated because the ceiling was too low.
Yeah, it was
the radius head windows, round head windows
on the upper level.
On the upper level, that was kind of a miss by the architect, I would presume. Is that a? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not expecting them to go against anything, and I think it's something we should pay, of course, but, I mean, that was just a miss by somebody.
Yeah,
somewhere.
we would have paid, but it wasn't bid, you know, like we've had a few other things, so, yeah.
And then the $24,000, that's the largest number we have in front of us, and there's nothing to show for that.
You know what?
I have to assume that was just a bunch of $300 change orders and a stair tread.
One of the major, there was like I want to say it's a little over $10,000. They ran into, very early on in the project, a sanitary sewer on Shumway Avenue that was too high. And it was made out of clay. And so they had to dig out bedrock to lower it to match the road. One of those things where as soon as a shovel hit the ground, it broke it.
Right.
And so we had to replace it.
Unforeseen condition.
But that's not quite half of it right there. And another larger one was the plumbing or the pipe fitter contractors over the course of 2 years had to install an extra valve or had to turn something into a 90. And, you know, those valves and 90s are $200 and $300 and $90 or $100 an hour labor. And so,
right.
So that made up $16,000 of the 24.
Well, like I've said in the past, I think Trotter did a great job overseeing the project. The change orders are minimal.
Yeah, other than right at the beginning, we got a little scared there because they were pretty large. But
but you know, it's really over the course of the project and the scope of the work, it's minimal. I thought they did an excellent job for the city of Batavia. So.
And we're going to be having some tours here coming up as soon as we just moved in less than 2 weeks ago, or about 2 weeks ago, so the place looks like somebody
moving
dumped a tractor shovel of boxes in the building. So,
well, it's pretty exciting now, I would think, for you and the crew.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Good.
We're going to bring you all down there some Tuesday night for
yeah.
Yeah, look forward to that.
Be a few weeks yet.
Any additional questions? If not, can I get a motion to authorize the change order number 8 with the Williams Brothers?
So moved.
Second.
Can I get a vote?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Let's have it.
I think we'll put that on consent also.
Sounds good.
Right?
Thank you.
Thank you, Byron. All right, next item would be item number 12, presentation, mid-year reports, communications. 11. No. Oh, I'm sorry, 11. Overview of the new Illinois law legalizing recreational use marijuana by City Attorney Roman Seckel. Hello, Roman.
Hello. Wrong presentation.
Minutes.
Well,
Not that one. Wait, am I? Easy.
Just to clarify, there's no action on this? This is
no,
just,
this is
Roman just...
purely informational purposes, so.
Right.
Laura, did you get the?
I did. I thought you were going to bring it on the thumb drive. I'm sorry. It's like that.
All right, well, just some opening remarks as before I get this loaded. This is just a general overview of the statute, the new act that was passed. Mind you, the act itself is 600-some pages long, so I didn't read through every single page because a lot of it's not relevant to what we're looking to do in Batavia here. but I did focus on what we can do in terms of legislating this, and what your options are in terms of zoning and other things. So basically, under the current zoning code, we already defined certain things such as a cannabis cultivation center, cannabis dispensary medical, and cannabis dispensary recreational. In the memo that was previously circulated, Scott was kind enough to indicate I did make a mistake that we do currently allow for cultivation centers and recreational dispensaries in light industrial and general industrial districts already, and cannabis dispensaries for medical purposes are allowed in commercial districts as a conditional use. Restrictions on the medical dispensary already in our zoning code provides that they're a little closer than 1,000 feet to schools, licensed daycare facilities, et cetera. No drive-through walk-up services, and that they're closed from 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. There are a whole bunch of new definitions that we would probably need to consider if the city wants to allow these type of businesses within the limits. They're all kind of laid out in their memo I provided to you, but we have cultivation centers where they actually would grow the cannabis, dispensaries where they'd sell it, infusers, organization or infusers. That's when they would be putting it into different products in that. Craft growers are kind of, if you want to think of the microbreweries, if you will. Transporting organizations, people that would be transporting it, processing organizations, people that would process it. And then the cannabis business establishment, or CBEs, they are kind of the general definition encompassing all these different type of businesses as one sort of general catch-all phrase. So the state really does control most of the actual licensing for these businesses. Most of it is done through the State Department of Agriculture. They handle the cultivation centers, processors, infusers, et cetera. The Department of Financial and Professional Regulation only will then license the dispensaries themselves. If the Batavia decides to allow these type of businesses in the city limits, they would have some ability to license them generally through business licensing, just to ensure their compliance with local building codes and all that. Number of licenses effective January 1st, 2020, when everything becomes legal. Medical dispensaries can apply for early dispensing and be allowed to set up a second location at least 1,500 feet from their current location. Additionally, there's contemplating up to 47 additional adult uses between Cook County and surrounding counties, including Kane, Lake, Page, et cetera, by May 1st. And then starting January 1st, 2021, they're looking at additional 21 licenses for dispensaries. And there's looked to be a cap of dispensaries throughout the state of Illinois, about 500. But so in our area, we're probably looking anywhere from 47 to 100 within Cook County and the collar counties. So just generally for the possession, you need to be an Illinois resident, 21 years of older. You can have up to 30 grams of cannabis flower, 5 grams of the concentrate, or up to 500 milligrams of THC in an infused product or edibles. If you're a non-resident, you can possess up to half these amounts. And medical users, of course, can possess greater amounts if they're approved medical users. Generally, it can be allowed anywhere, but there are specific prohibited places, including public streets, parks, etc., within motor vehicles by drivers and passengers, on school grounds, except for medical users. You're also prohibited from using it near anyone near 21 years of age or younger, near any on-duty school bus driver, police officer, firefighter, paramedic, etc. And also property owners, business owners, landlords, etc., can also prohibit the use of cannabis on their own private property. That would be something they would have to specifically provide for or disallow. So landlords in the Batavia could provide in their leases that the use of cannabis on the property would be prohibited. There was some discussion on smoke shops and similar, can they smoke inside of buildings or uses and all that. There was a Sun-Times article that says, it's going to be open, bars and theaters and et cetera can be areas where you can smoke cannabis in the wide open. The provision of the issue states that a cannabis business establishment or other entity authorized or permitted by a unit of local government to allow on-site consumption shall not be deemed a public place within the meaning of the Smoke-Free Illinois Act. And what the Sun-Times article took the language that says any other business to mean that, the city itself could have granted the license to theaters, bars, et cetera, to allow it. The prevailing thought, though, is that this is not the intention of the statute, that really if a business wants to allow smoking cannabis in the business itself, they need to be a cannabis business establishment, such as a dispensary, and have a separate area designated for that purpose, similar to how cigar shops operate nowadays. So it was definitely a misrepresentation by the Sun-Times, but I can tell you right now, reading some comments from the legislators as well, and people, proponents of this, they want to maybe open that up in the future once it becomes more widely acceptable as they believe it would be. There was a concern at one point of homegrown, that people would be allowed to grow unlimited quantities in their own yards. The statute did do a general restriction on that. To home grow your own cannabis or marijuana, you need to be a licensed medical user, 21 years of older. You can have up to 5 plants in, 5 inches or taller. Cultivation must be obscured from public view and take place in a secure and locked place, basically in a situation that would prohibit anybody from being under 21 years of age to access it. So we shouldn't have a situation of people growing these in the gardens with their beans and tomatoes and all that. They could, in theory, grow these in their greenhouses or sheds in the backyard or in their own home, so long as it's not open to the public view. Public view in the act is generally defined as anybody walking down the street, can they see it? And it also has to be grown in residential property. And the person that's growing it has to have their ability to grow it. If they're a tenant, they have the permission of their landlord. If they do own the property, they they can do it themselves. If they're a 21-year-old college student with a medical user living with their parents, in theory, they would need their parents' permission in order to grow it themselves at home. Local control, this is probably the crux of the presentation, is the primary way that Batavia can do this is going to be through zoning. Can we prohibit all kind of cannabis business establishments within the borders? There is some language in there that suggests, yes, the Batavia can take the stand that we can prohibit all these type of businesses within Batavia city limits. There is some other language in there that suggests that may not be the case. My reading different commentaries in that there are conflicting views, but I would say the majority and the better reasoned ones suggest that the suggestion that if Batavia wants to prohibit all of it, they can. But if they want to allow some businesses like a cultivation center but not a dispensary, they could do that as well. But they would really do it all through the zoning in terms of what they would allow, where they would allow it. Batavia, though, cannot pass any sort of ordinances that would prohibit homegrowners or unreasonably prohibit the actual use of cannabis or marijuana. So if allowed, if that's the decision that council wants to make, you can enact reasonable zoning and restrictions upon it. The act states that you can't be more strict than what is allowed by the law. So there are certain things in the law that says that, well, the dispensary can't be within 1,500 feet of another dispensary. Well, can Batavia change that to 2,000 feet in front of the dispensary? That's sort of an open question. The conservative approach, I would say, is, given my reading of the act, is no, you can't, because you can't be more restrictive in the statute. You can be more open than that, but you can't be more restrictive. Same thing with hours of operations. The act says that a dispensary could be open from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Could the Batavia pass something that dispensaries can be open from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. as currently provided for medical dispensaries? In theory, they could, but there's some language in the statute that suggests that we can't be more restrictive. Can we put a hard number cap on additional conditional use permits or additional these type of businesses? I think we can, but we have to be within reasonableness of it. And of course, there are already general restrictions in the statute that says the cannabis business establishments need to be within outside of 1,000 feet of schools, daycare centers, arcades that allow 21 children or people of 21 years of age or younger, so they can't be opening right up next to Funway, if you will. Of course, though, they were generous and gave you the ability to tax it if you do allow it. You can tax it in 0.25% increments up to 3% of the gross receipts. It's handled like any other sales tax throughout the city, administered through the Department of Revenue. And also 8% of the state sales tax would be put in the local government distributed fund. One of the concerns that I know was raised at previous council meetings is the enforcement of it through DUIs. Of course, all the restrictions of operating under the influence of marijuana, cannabis, whatever, are still in place. The issue, and I think Chief Yule can back this up, is that there's really no reliable roadside test for it. They can do blood tests and all that, but it doesn't necessarily determine when or how much was consumed. It just tells you that it was in your system. And while there's things in the statute that says, well, yes, if there's a reliable test, it'll be deemed admissible in court. The fact of the matter, there is no reliable test right now. And that's kind of my overall, just general thumbnail summary of the statute, what the act says and provides for. Open up to any questions you guys may have. I may have answers tonight. I may have to get back to you.
Questions or comments? Dan?
First of all, thank you.
Yes.
For taking the time to do this. I tried to read through the statute, and it's bulky. One thing I'm confused on, though. On the first year, it says there's 47 licenses that are supposed to be issued between Chicago, Naperville, Aurora.
Yeah.
Does that mean that all these municipalities are like competing against each other to be the first one to issue one of those 47 licenses? If we're number 48, we got to wait till the next year when the next ones are released. So are we like competing? And I ask this because I've spoken to other council members in other towns who are like, oh yeah, we are actively marketing this right now. In fact, they're planning a hemp fest in one town. They want to get in front of this. They want to, they want those licenses. So are we competing, I guess? That's the first most important thing.
The licenses themselves would be issued by the state. So those 47 licenses are issued by the state. Where those licensees are granted and where they're looking to set up their shop, if you will, is really up to the individual business owners. As part of the application requirements, so they have to submit proof that what they want to do, whether it's the dispensary for the 47, is that they're allowed where they want to set up in that municipality and they are compliant to the local zoning code. So let's say, example, that you want to put these in a commercial district, but the business where they want to set up is an industrial, well, that wouldn't be in compliance with the zoning code, so they wouldn't be eligible for their license. And so what the city would have to do is say, okay, we're going to put these here, or in these districts, they're going to be allowed. The business as well, okay, I found a property in that district that would be suitable. This is where I want to put it. They would put the application process and say, hey, we want to put it in the commercial district. Here's the property. It's in the commercial district. Here's a letter from Scott Beauty, the community development director, saying we'd be properly zoned for what we want to do here. It's a conditional use. We are in the process of pursuing that conditional use, and it looks positive that we'll get that conditional use. That's all part of the application process when they submit it to the state.
So then from a procedural standpoint, it's incumbent upon us to incorporate the definitions into our own code first, which would even allow somebody to apply, and then on top of that, then we need to set a tax rate.
Yeah.
Which, right, as high as we can.
And perhaps a business license fee as well.
Yeah, the business license fee would have to have some relationship to the actual city efforts to monitor that license. Like you can't say a $10,000 license fee if that city work that would put into make sure the license is being complied with is $200. But like any other sort of business license fee that the city has.
And then to make determinations if special use is important, like do we want to prohibit this from the downtown business district? God forbid they put up next to a tattoo place. We would look at. We have to approve those things first before someone can even apply here.
Yes.
Okay. And then also thank you for putting this all in plain writing. The nightmare scenario the mayor was concerned about having people growing in all their backyards it doesn't sound like that's going to be an issue here. It seems like there's a lot of protections in place.
Yeah, from reading some articles, it looked like that was a push by certain segments of the population. They wanted to be, well, people can grow their own grapes, they can grow the hops for beer, why can't we grow our own pot or marijuana? But the legislature felt to get the support they needed to limit that and take out that consideration, except for the people that are the medical users that want to have a limited amount of homegrown product.
But a recreational user can still have an ounce on them. They can have, 50 edible doses on them. That's a lot to be able to possess. So,
okay.
Thanks for clarifying all that.
Nick?
Just out of curiosity, they specify if you're a dispensary, you're either recreational or medicinal. Why do they separate those? Do you know?
Scott?
Yeah, and so that comes into play with when we did the amendments for the medical marijuana. That was something the city did. So we created 3 categories. We created the cultivation center, we created the medical dispensary, and then in anticipation of what the new legislation was coming, we created the definition for a recreational dispensary. We created the definition, but we have no land uses that are available anywhere in the city because we don't zone it anywhere right now. So we kind of did that in anticipation that, that was going to happen. So technically, because we define it, but we don't zone it anywhere, it's not allowed anywhere in the city right now. So that's part of the future discussion that we're going to have is, do you want to allow it? And if you do, what are those parameters?
I was under the impression reading that statewide that's the case. Am I wrong on that?
Statewide, that
you're either recreational or you're...
Yeah, there's the two distinctions, but in our zoning code, we did put two definitions in there just in case.
Right. But I was just curious why the state would, if somebody opened up a dispensary now, it's got to be medicinal. They can't sell recreational. They have to create something 1,500 feet away.
Well, let me clarify that.
And I don't understand why.
No, starting January 1st, the medical dispensaries can start selling recreationally.
For a short period of time until they build out. And I'm just curious as to why. I mean, it really won't affect us, but I was just curious as to why they would say you can't sell to somebody who needs it versus somebody who wants it.
Yeah, entirely speculating. I think there are some provisions in the statute requiring medical dispensaries to keep a certain stock on hand for medical users, so the recreational users don't quote buy out all the stock. There's some concern, I guess, from reading some articles that, will Illinois have enough supply to meet the potential demand, especially initially, because one of the requirements is that anything that's sold in a dispensary in Illinois needs to be grown and produced in Illinois. They can't import it from out of state.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I just want to offer a couple comments. I think, number one, there's a lot of concern in the region. I've been to some meetings this week with some of the other mayors about what we really got going here. I mean, we can say all we want about people growing it in their backyard and they can't grow it. There's a lot of people are of the belief we're going to have a big underground market going on here. It's going to, number one, try to beat all the tax that the state of Illinois has decided they're going to lay on this as a revenue generator. So that's going to be in conflict. I would tell you that I think whatever town we're talking, Batavia included, we're going to drop a whole bunch of additional work onto our police department with this thing, because there's going to be a lot of people with suspicions in the neighborhood about what's really happening behind that shed or in that building or whatever have you. And I've talked with Chief Ewell and his two deputies. We went yesterday and met with Karina Villa down at her office, and the chiefs were able to share some of their concerns with her. And I was at a meeting earlier of the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus, and we had the discussions that this law is probably going to need some further revision as it works its way forward, because there's going to be a lot of different missteps found in this thing that are going to have to be dealt with pretty quick. So this is not a plain Jane that's just out there. This is heavy duty stuff. And, some of the implications of people who use it in the wrong way or the wrong purpose, there's a lot of tragedy that could come out of this thing. So, I think if you're a state legislator, you better be cautious what you're voting for here, because this was one of these legacy bills that can really come back to haunt you in a few years if this thing goes bad.
Well, I just find it amazing that our state legislator would vote, that the state government would vote or even put it into an ordinance that you can grow it at home. I mean, it's the whole reason they're doing it is for tax dollars. And now you're just taking away from the tax dollars, as you said, Mayor, that it would be some sort of an underground deal just to avoid paying taxes. So I would figure just leave that out completely if you wanted to make, improve your tax burden. But anyway, anybody else? The Chief, would you like to chime in on any of this? Not to put you on the spot.
No, like I said, I could talk for hours about this. We've been monitoring it for several years now, really ever since the medical marijuana came into play, and then the decriminalization effort. This is basically the standard playbook for any state that has legalized recreational marijuana usage. You start with medical marijuana, you move to decriminalization, and you move to legalization. So Illinois just followed the playbook. The other 10 states did as well. Regarding the nightmare scenario that Alderman Chanda was talking about, I can tell you that the initial drafts of the legislation did include that. It was wildly expansive, and there was a lot of efforts by anti-marijuana legalization lobbies, and to include the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police, the Illinois Sheriff's Association, to push back against those things, because we agree that it didn't make any sense. At one point, they wanted every citizen to be able to grow 5 plants, and then it pared down to every household, and then they ended up, it wasn't a complete win, but paring it back to only medical marijuana users, like we think was a healthy compromise. Although oversight's going to be very difficult for this. It's going to be very difficult for us to know, who's growing inside in their homes and whether or not they have a medical marijuana usage card. The upside is that they won't be doing open grows in their backyards, and it won't be for every household in the community.
Thank you, Chief. Anyone else? Mike?
I have a question. If we stop somebody and you find marijuana on that person, how do you distinguish if it's been bought legally or illegally?
Boy, that's a good question.
Yeah.
And, we're not really sure about that. Obviously, when they purchase it, once it becomes legal. Now, the medical marijuana users, when they purchase, they have canisters that they get from the medical marijuana dispensaries. They're clearly marked and labeled. Law enforcement is fairly pleased with the process by which Illinois conducts the medical marijuana program. At one point in time, we requested that the state legislature just expand the access to the medical marijuana program as opposed to full recreational legalization. But obviously, the difference between medical marijuana from a legislative and revenue generating standpoint and recreational marijuana is there is no tax revenue generated by the medical marijuana program. Mm-hmm. So that's it's going to be more difficult once it becomes recreational. There's a lot of questions about the recreational usage. So you buy 30 grams of marijuana at a dispensary, and then you just keep refilling it with the stuff you buy from your buddy down the street that you've been buying from for I don't know how we differentiate between leaf cannabis from a legal dispensary and leaf cannabis from the black market, because the reality of it is, because this is still a Schedule I drug at the federal level, that's why they can't transport it across state lines. It's a federal felony to do so. So at the onset, at least, there's going to be more demand than there is supply of marijuana. And how are they going to catch up to that? That's the question. And does the black market, supplement the legal market at some point?
Chief, it's an all-cash business too, correct?
Yes, and because it's a Schedule I drug at the federal level, that was one of the, there are really some practical concerns we tried to address, and when we addressed it with the Congresswoman yesterday, she did not really have a solid answer. State Representative yesterday, she did not really have a solid answer. What are they going to do with all the money? The states, we've had briefings from law enforcement and Attorney General's employees from other states that have legalized, namely Colorado, who gives us anecdotal references of dispensaries building false walls in their buildings so they can pile up all the money because they can't put it in a bank. And they run out of ideas of where to store the money. And until the federal laws and the state laws can mesh better, this is just a practical problem that we're going to have to deal with. And, they become stop and robs because everybody knows they're cash heavy.
Right.
It's a major concern for us from a law enforcement perspective, public safety. And the legislature doesn't seem to have thought too much about it. And then what Roman indicated, there is no presumptive test for field testing for DUI cannabis. So it's a much more arduous process. We have a portable breath tester we can use in the field for alcohol. We do not have any kind of similar device for cannabis, so it requires much more extensive field investigation. And then we have to ship the samples we get off from blood off to a laboratory. Now, when medical marijuana went live in the state of Illinois, and then they decriminalized, the state of Illinois realized there's going to be a huge glut or increase in DUI cannabis cases, or they expected it. So they sent out a white letter from the state police, crime labs, that said, don't send it to us. We don't have the capacity to test it. So what we do now is when we have a suspected DUI cannabis, we send our samples out to a contract laboratory in Pennsylvania at about $180 a test.
Insane.
Yeah, Mike, just going back to your other comment too, there are provisions in the statute if you are transporting, you need to have like a sealed container, not accessible while you're driving. I don't know if that really helps anything, but the legislature did, in theory, think about some of those issues, but yeah, it really doesn't address your concern as to how sealed is it. Did they just refill it as Chief Yule indicated or not, so.
Okay. Mark, you.
In the use where it can be smoked, it talks about, can't smoke in a public place, but where does public and private draw a line like in a Jewel parking lot. You're not in the Jewel, but you're in the parking lot. And it's obviously it's owned by a private entity. Where does enforcement go from that point? Is that just you have to be in your home basically? It would be the only thing that I can see where you could smoke it.
Well, I think I could probably answer that. They have to abide by the Smoke-Free Illinois Act.
But if
in
you're
those
in a-
cases, it would be the
Smoke in a
same
parking
rules would apply. So if you could smoke a cigarette there,
But no, because it says you can't smoke in a public place such as streets or parks. I can smoke a cigarette walking across the Peace Bridge.
True.
Can I smoke a joint? Not me personally. Can somebody smoke a joint?
Asking for a friend. No, but you can chew on a gummy.
Well, actually, Mark, I can kind of answer that. What the act, and I should probably cover this in my presentation, what they define a public place as is any place where a person could reasonably be expected to be observed by others, excluding private residences. So unlike smoking a cigarette, if you're smoking a joint in the Joe parking lot and seen by others, in theory, you're smoking in a public place, which would be a prohibited use.
That's our interpretation of that as well, that public accessible is a public place.
So just in your home is the only real place.
Yeah. So then I guess the last question is, it also says
With your kids.
near someone under age of 21, so the enforcement becomes really challenging if somebody has kids at home, because theoretically, you wouldn't be able to smoke in your home if you have kids under 21. Is that correct as well?
Feel-good legislative language, essentially, because it's going to be very difficult for us to provide oversight to that. But yes, I think from a technical perspective, then maybe that's possible, although, if it's in their private residence, we'd have to be there for some other reason.
Dan.
Just to piggyback on what the chief was saying, I was hoping that there would be some direction from state legislators on what the next step is going to be, because getting this to the federal level, we need an answer on this. To speak in general terms, working in the banking industry, I've had clients who have been in this industry and they cannot bank with me. Right. They've banked with some credit unions that are cool with this because they're not regulated by the OCC. They deal heavily in cash, but they very quickly convert that cash into purchasing land with cash. So what's happening is these few people that have these licenses, I have one in Colorado, she has like 3,000 acres that she's purchased now because she can't hold cash, but she can buy land with it technically. We need an answer on the federal level, so the more times that you can stress with our state legislators that they need to push our federal government to make a decision on this, either this needs to be illegal everywhere or this needs to be legal everywhere.
It was a point of discussion with Representative Villa yesterday. I agree.
It's a federal crime to use my debit card if I were to try and purchase something, technically. We need an answer on this, we really do.
The other major point or topic of discussion or concern for law enforcement is the fact that there is really no provision right now for local oversight of this from a compliance perspective. It's going to be, oversight is going to be provided by the Illinois State Police. Right now, from what I understand, their medical marijuana unit, their MMU, is going to be providing oversight for the recreational program as well. Now, to put that into perspective, they currently oversee, I think, 11 cultivation centers in the state and 55 dispensaries. As just by Roman's indication, complete build-out expansion is going to be over 500 facilities. And I think that's a low number, quite honestly. As long as there's demand, they are going to continue to issue licenses because it's all attached to revenue. So I've asked several of the legislators why there is not a local oversight component to this, and they just kind of give me a blank stare. The state police is going to handle that. The state police doesn't have the capacity to handle that. They don't have it with alcohol. They don't have it with tobacco. They don't have it with any of the other vice activities that we oversee at the local level. Video gaming, massage, those sorts of things.
Anybody else? Scott?
Just a practical question, I guess. So if this is an all-cash business and you can't deposit at a bank, how do you pay your taxes on the sale of that product?
You're honest and you're telling the truth.
There's a line item on your tax return where you're allowed.
No. I'm talking about if you're for the seller,
You declare it and the state rebates it, so
they come with a truck and pick up your cash.
We're all complicit.
Sure. This should be interesting.
Makes the audit interesting.
Yeah. Anyone else? Thank you, Roman.
Scott.
Sorry, Scott, sorry.
And so one of the other things that hasn't really been talked about is CBD. And I'm not talking about Central Business District, but I'm talking about the hemp extract that is become very popular. So based on our definition that we did when we did the medical marijuana, CBD products are considered part of cannabis. And our definition basically says that you can't sell cannabis products even though it's becoming widely sold in different places. So right now our definition actually doesn't allow for anybody to sell CBD type products even though they don't have the THC content of true marijuana. So that's something that we're probably going to need to look at because we've had some inquiries about that as well, for those types of businesses also.
Wow.
Probably sold in the farmer's market right now, isn't it?
I know it's sold in some places in town, and then that becomes a question of, okay, is it okay to do it as an accessory use, but is it okay, or do we want to regulate it more highly as a primary use, saying percentage of the sales or something like that? So that's, again, the whole variety of things we have to consider as part of this.
It just sounds like a big mess being dumped on all the municipalities.
Yep.
That's what it sounds like.
I have been contacted by 2 businesses in town that want to get this license and get themselves into business doing this as quickly as they can. And I told them both that, you're going to have to sit back here we got to have this report from the city attorney. Council wants to talk about this. We want to talk about the pros and the cons. And this isn't anything that's going to happen, but kind of picking up on what Alderman Shannon said, there's a rush at the door here to see who's going to get their hands on some of these licenses. And I think at the end of the day, one of the things that's out there is there's a political answer at these licenses, who's getting these licenses. As there is in many times in state government, there's a political resolve to much of this stuff. And this appears to be going in that direction, in my opinion, as to who's going to get these licenses, if there's 47 of them.
Are you saying some are already predetermined?
I don't know what they are.
Well, it sounds like to Alderman Salvati's point too, no one's going to pay taxes on this. How do you?
It's going to be a good one to see how much they run.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's just like clean cash. Dan.
So we probably do have to it's great we had this discussion tonight. We do need to revisit this and give staff some direction on
where
we're at, because we probably need to straw poll to see, do we have enough votes here to say, yeah, we want this in our town, and then what's a tax rate we're going to set for it.
One of the things that I might suggest coming from this discussion here tonight is that you allow staff to provide you with a memo that outlines that all of the different decisions that we need to make in ways that we need to change or create new ordinances. And then under each of those, to provide you with the best information that we can about the pros and cons of whether to do it or not to do it.
Can we acknowledge this probably needs its own entire meeting, probably?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And something that's well publicized so that members of the public who would like to also share their knowledge and opinions with you have an opportunity to do so. So maybe sometime in August, once we get past we've got some pretty full agendas with the mid-year reports and some of the, we want to get in some of the downtown planning issues that we have facing us.
So we took 15 hours of testimony on Campana. I imagine we'll take at least 15 hours of testimony on something like this. We should probably have multiple nights. We should be prepared for that.
Just be prepared for that, yes.
Anybody else? Thank you, Roman.
Thank you.
Thanks. Nice job.
Okay. Next item is number 12, presentation, mid-year reports, communications, Griffin Price.
So I usually do a little bit of an introduction with each one of these mid-year reports, and I have to say in just the 2 months that Griffin has been with the city, he is already making an impact. It is clear that he has a high degree of both technical skills, but also has been a great resource already to many of our departments. He's worked on projects with economic development, and we're excited to have had him join our team. And I think you're going to enjoy his presentation this evening.
That was so nice. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
It's good to see everyone. So I've made a presentation. It's different. I was having too much fun, and I was like, let's spice it up a little bit. Also, when that presentation's done, ask me any questions that you have, and then I'm going to let you guys know that I'll be sending you information to hear your feedback on what we're doing communications, marketing-wise, and what we can improve on, and your opinions. So. Hello, my name is Griffin Price, and I'm the new Communications Coordinator for the City of Batavia. I want to cover a few different topics today and keep this presentation as brief and entertaining as possible. I'm going to talk with you about internal communication, analytics, and city rebranding. Now, I've only been here for 2 months, but I did live in the city for 22 years, and there's a lot in Batavia to cover. Collaborating with department heads, we now have a standard internal communications calendar that will be filled in throughout the year with more specifics to keep everyone on the same page. It's my job to alert the public and press about city news, so when there's an emergency or update, I work with our leaders to send out accurate and timely press releases. I'm also in charge of the city e-newsletter, website, and social media. As you can imagine, there's a lot to keep track of. Over the next few months, I'll be looking at enhancing website user experience, city design, and marketing pieces to attract companies, customers, and residents. Let's take a look at the last 6 months of analytical data. The city currently has a Facebook and a Twitter account. Our Facebook likes have been pretty consistent, though in both Facebook and Twitter there is a spike in April of this year from communication regarding the possible armed man entering the high school. We'll be looking at ways we can improve social media in the near future. On Twitter we can see a similar pattern, and the good news is that all of these engagements are additions to our total following, and our goal is to communicate to as many people as possible, which right now we reach around 4,000 to 6,000. In regards to our e-newsletter, we have a little detective work to do. Though we're consistently between the 30 and 40% open rate range, last year the program didn't seem to accurately report the emails sent, showing a range of 2 to 20% from January to May. We're currently considering a design and software change to gather more information about how the city can more effectively communicate via email. And now for the website. All good stuff here. Just a reminder for those who may not know, a page view is a visit to a page on the website. If the visitor reloads a page, this counts as an additional page view. If the user navigates to a different page and then returns to the original page, this will count as another page view. A visit is defined as a sequence of consecutive page views without a 30-minute break. A visit always contains one or more page views, and we are reporting on the visits. Our top pages include the home page, jobs, brush collection, utility services, online payment processing, and garbage recycling and yard waste. There's been a steady increase over the year, another spike in April, but overall we do see more and more people using the site. And comparing the data from 2018 and 2019, there is a 4% jump of people accessing the website from phones and tablets. This is why it's important to have a good website user experience and representation from the city. Speaking of representation, it's time to talk about rebranding. It's my understanding that the city worked with Spark Incorporated regarding brand and identity. Although the research is excellent in understanding community and agency impressions, the council ultimately did not feel that the final branding matched the city. I've looked over the information, and as a Batavian I can agree that it is indeed a community of neighbors and that the current logo and tagline need reevaluation in terms of representation of Batavians today. So as proposed earlier this year, we're looking to execute the last half of the rebranding process by evaluating a logo and tagline for the city of Batavia. Because without effectively communicating and marketing the city, it won't be an attractive place to companies, residents, or customers. The fundamental difference between commercial and government branding is profit and trust. A brand is used to present yourself to people and a way for your audience to instantly recall who you are. A government agency that doesn't communicate the trust or community is going to struggle. Without those, the brand falls flat and fails to instill the confidence people need in government. Just as you wouldn't wear the same type of clothes you wore in elementary school as you would as an adult, organizations grow and evolve into entities with new meaning and purpose while still sharing basic functions they had when they were younger. Branding builds credibility, establishes professionalism, and is very effective. Here are some facts that relate to the reasoning behind a branding update. The average revenue increase attributed to always presenting a brand consistently is 23%. Color increases brand recognition by up to 80%. 64% of consumers cite shared values as the primary reason they have a relationship with a brand. 72% of marketers think branded content is more effective than advertising in a magazine. 62% say it's more effective than advertising on television, and 69% say it's superior to both direct mail and public relations. 48% of consumers report they are more likely to become loyal to a brand during the first purchase or experience. With that information in mind, I'd like you to take a look at the current logo. The great news is we have an opportunity to make a step forward and give the city a more accurate representation while utilizing previous research. Or you may decide that our current brand is the best possible representation for today's Batavia. Either way, I can't wait to update you on the future of this process. That's all I have for this report. Thank you for your time. There you go. So moving forward then, I want to hear all of your opinions on the city and the branding process, because I heard that in previous research you guys weren't reached out to or interviewed or talked to about any input that you guys would have with that. So I am working with a designer. We have nothing completed yet in terms of like, oh, we've got this, we want to show council, we want to show staff. We're just in those beginning stages, and so I want to get your guys' input before we go any further with that, and then eventually bring some items to you guys to look at and just evaluate and see what you think and see what you could do to move forward. I've seen a lot of communities that have incredible pride like this one, and their branding matches it, and so they get even bigger turnouts, they get even more people interested. Working in Lombard, if you have anything that's purple, people would just buy it. They take it, you leave it on the shelf, it's gone, they leave money. Why? Because that energy, which I would actually say is the same as the energy that's in Batavia, has something now to use. So by giving the people kind of a new logo and a new look, things that we can translate to downtown, the way we represent ourselves, can make a huge impact in how much people perceive the city and the work that we do. So I think it would be great if we could make progress in that way. Do you guys have any questions for me? Anything you'd like to be updated on? Any specifics?
Any questions or comments for Griffin? Yes, that's it.
Great. Great job, Griffin.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, next item is project status.
Okay, so just to provide you with an update on the groundwater testing at 1 Washington Place, they should be completing the testing this week, and we should receive our report probably by sometime early August, Gary? Yes. But the individuals who are out there doing the testing, while, you know, they can't be definitive until they get into the lab, they said that the samples that they took were fairly dry down to the, right down to the bedrock, and that there was no noticeable detection of any chemicals present. So fingers crossed. This afternoon, as part of our regular weekly staff meeting, we conducted a tabletop exercise at our Emergency Operations Center, and that included all of the various department heads and actually getting out equipment that we would use in the event of an emergency, such as a natural disaster or some huge weather event, or even things like a riot that might occur in town. It's important that at least once per year that we go through drills like that, so that we can be sure that in the event of something like that occurs, that we are as ready as we possibly can be. And each time that we go through those tabletop exercises, we learn about ways that we can improve our emergency preparedness. Also, we've been working with the Park District on one of our strategic action plan items, which is collaborating with them on future planning for our riverfront and the future of the dam and Depot Pond. And we have scheduled a meeting with John Rabchuk. He is a very prominent member of the Active River Project in St. Charles, and we wanted to meet with him to talk about the process that St. Charles went through. They're a lot further along in this process than we are just beginning, and we want to see what we can learn from the process that they followed and gain any insights we can from that as we go through the process ourselves. We have completed our conflict resolution and customer service training for over 100 employees. This was done in collaboration with the workforce training department at Waubonsee Community College. So an excellent opportunity for us to partner with another one of our local government entities. And everybody had an opportunity, whether they were people who work in utility billing or finance or administration, to all of our public works employees, because the conflict resolution and customer service skills are something that are an essential part of every one of the jobs that we do here in the city of Batavia, not only as it pertains to providing services to residents and businesses, but also in the way that we work on teams with one another. So it was a good opportunity to come together to discuss how we do those things the best that we can, because oftentimes we go to those training sessions, it may not be completely new information that we're hearing there, but it's allowing us the opportunity to remember to execute on those things as we're doing our job so that we can do our very best. One of the other projects, and this is something that Griffin is on this team, we are developing a data center recruiting program, just as the state is implementing a data center tax incentive program in the state of Illinois. Data centers are high energy users, and the city of Batavia having its own electric utility is uniquely positioned in order to offer some very competitive advantages to data centers locating their businesses here in the city of Batavia. We also have an update of our website that has now gone into the production stage. So we do have a production version of our new website, and it will relaunch on August 2nd, and you will see a completely new face on our website. And there is a team of individuals on staff from all of the various departments who are collaborating together to review the information that's available on our website, the way that it is organized, and trying to eliminate some of the obsolete information from that to make sure that information that people need is in a place where they can easily find it, and that it's presented in a visually appealing manner.
Is it built on the same backbone that it's currently on?
Yes. We had a contract with Civic Plus that this was part of our agreement with them, was to do a refresh in this year. So now when we get to the end of this contractual phase, we can decide if we want to continue on this platform or if we want to look at other platforms as well. Next Tuesday, we will have presentations from the Finance Department and Public Works Department on their mid-year. And then also either on the 23rd, or we'll just take a look at how heavy that schedule is, but sometime toward the end of July or beginning of August, I'd like to provide you with the presentation of the second quarter update on our strategic action plan. We're making some real progress on the projects there, and I want to share that with you. Also, BATV. BATV is such a phenomenal resource for our community to have access to, and Griffin actually worked for BATV when he was a student who worked with BATV. And so he's very familiar with the operation. He's really kind of made new avenues for us to be able to utilize that as a resource. And one of those was apparently a few years back, we used to do a municipal minute. And it was an opportunity for BATV to come out and do a program about a particular project that the city was working on. And so we're going to start doing that again on a monthly basis. And our very first one, we're going to go out and film tomorrow morning. And so very soon you will see that in the BATV programming. So that's a few of the projects that we have going right now.
For the meeting with the Batavia Park District and St. Charles, would that be open for those that might want to attend?
We had not planned on it being a public meeting, but would you?
If aldermanic people would like to show
I
up.
will. You would be most welcome. I will send that out to you.
That'd be great.
Same here.
Anyone else have anything for Laura?
Question
Elliot.
in terms of process. I remember when we did the strategic plan, we talked about having an annual, checkup on it, not anything to do with your quarterly updates towards it, but just to make sure that, the council, especially now that we have 3 new members, that we're constantly keeping it in front of us and fine tuning it as we go along. Are we anticipating doing that sometime in the next couple of months here before we get into budget season?
Yeah, I think maybe early August might be a good time for that meeting as well.
I've got a couple others if I can.
Okay. Are you all done, Laura?
Just put everybody on notice on the 23rd, which is 2 weeks from tonight. I'd like to do a downtown walk of Batavia and start at about 6:30 and probably gather here at City Hall. And probably the first place I think I'd like to walk to is probably over at the intersection of First and Water Street, because we've heard a lot of different conversations recently from them about alleyways and crossings and whatever. And I think it would be good for the council to understand, and I'll try to get some of the folks who are involved in some of those ideas to meet us there for 5-10 minutes and just go over some of the things that are being proposed, so that, because some of this may come back to you relatively quick, and I think it'd be good for you to know what's going on. Then I would envision we'll probably leave there and walk back toward the river, and then go by the old City Hall, and then probably down to the island bridges and do a quick walk across those, and then come back up the east side of the river along the area there where the Park District is in the process of creating a park there along South River Street. But then I want to stop and have us look at the parking lot that's behind the businesses on the south side of Wilson Street at Wilson and River, because the bank is about to close, the drive-through windows. There's a lot of changes. There's a couple new businesses about to open up there. And then we'll look at that, and then we're going to walk over and hopefully be able to get a better perspective of the 2 new restaurants that are opening on the Wilson Street Hill. We can all then kind of maybe take a real quick stroll through the old Baptist church site, I'll call it, because there's things happening there that you should be aware of. And then go down onto River Street, and then take a kind of a review with all of you and everybody there to understand, what was the vision of River Street when we did it originally. And I'm going to see if I can get Alderman Brown to come back, because he and Alderman O'Brien were kind of the 2 voices and I'd like to maybe ask them to kind of bring some insight as to what we were doing with the Woonoof and, why we did it the way we did it. And then we've got over there, the public safety fire department specifically has some building concerns about access to buildings, and when we have all the streets closed and people there and whatever. I think we can work all that out. I've met with the fire chief, and we've got some stuff going, but I think we all should understand it. And then probably I'd like to walk up and look at the Challenge Factory up on North River Street, because I would suggest that could be another place where we could see some significant redevelopment activity over the next few years. I'm not going to put a time on it, but I think there's some real exciting things that could happen along the riverbank in Batavia on both the east and the west banks. And we will be sharing with you some of the conversations that we have, so everybody's not in the surprise when we hear something. But there's a lot of conversation going on about people wanting to come into downtown Batavia and do stuff. So I just wanted to bring all you up to date on that. That's going to be on the 23rd. Hopefully the weather's cooperative. Next thing I'd just like to quickly share is that Mark Foster is sitting in the front row here, but he's now the new editor of the Historical Society newsletter, and he allowed for the publication in the most recent newsletter of a story of the 50th anniversary of the moon landing, which is coming up on the 20th of this month. And Batavia has a very unique role in that. I mean, unlike any other town around here, we've got some things happened here in relation to that are very unique. And today I started getting inquiries from the Chicago media about what did this really happen in Batavia and how did all this come together and who was related to who and everything else. So I'm thinking we may be getting ourselves on some shows here relatively quick about the moon landing, because there's a lot of people looking to do something in commemoration of that. And as I've been told by a couple of my neighboring mayors, Batavia's got a corner on that market as far as the moon landing, because we're seeming to the place where all the history rendezvoused. And interestingly, it's all starting in this room where the fuel lines were made that were in the rocket that landed on the moon. And going forth there to Buzz Aldrin's grandfather being the minister of the Methodist Church and his mother going to school in Batavia. There's a lot of different things, and their last name was Moon. There's some real interesting kind of rendezvous with American history. And then we have the story of when this building was occupied by a company by the name of DK Aerospace. And in the 1960s, one of our city electricians, Greg Hodges' father, was plant manager here, and he told the story that on two different occasions, Werner von Braun, who is the man that's credited with taking us to the moon, came here and one time he spent 20 hours in this room playing around with this flexible fuel line. And there's some interesting kind of anecdotal stuff about that. So we've got some really, really neat little things that we can share that really, I think, again, set the Batavia story up and let people appreciate what strong history we have here. And then changing the subject a little bit, I've been to a couple of mayoral meetings already this week. I was at one yesterday in Oak Brook, and one of the conversations that came up, and everybody seems to be kind of reading and seeing the same thing. If you've been watching TV news the last few weeks, there's suddenly been a new push about recycling of waste products. And fortunately, we've got the Batavia Environmental Commission that maybe put us a little bit ahead of the game here. But it would appear that the recycling world, as we all know it and currently use it, may be in for some drastic alterations. And some of those alterations may not be free. There may be some costs attached to recycling in the days ahead that are not currently there with us. And I think that's some of the conversation that I'm hearing, and a bunch of the mayors I was with yesterday had heard the same things, that we got to redo how we recycle here, because we used to be able to give a lot of this stuff away or recycle it into other products, and that seems to be changing a little bit. So I'm not sure yet what I'm talking about, but that's out there, and it's one that I think all of you should be aware of that may be happening, and it's nothing unique to us. It's happening throughout the region. But we may have, again, an interesting aspect to this in that we have the waste recycling plant right out here in the industrial park on Hubbard, and they're dealing with it on a day-to-day basis out there. So we may want to bring some of those folks in here sometime in the near future and have them give us some insights as to where they think that whole thing is going, because some really changing times in the world that we're living in, as we've already talked about tonight with some of the things that were brought up here already. So this is a very interesting time to be here. You guys are probably living or working and serving in one of the most historical moments in the history of the city of Batavia.
Thank you. Scott?
Do you think we should bump up our time for our walking tour? Because it sounds like it's pretty aggressive.
Maybe on flashlight.
We made it our bikes.
Well, one of the things that I was wondering, we could have it on the Wednesday night instead of the Tuesday night. So to have our regular committee of the whole meeting on Tuesday, the 23rd, and do the walk around town on the 24th is a possibility.
I'm good with that.
Well,
we have a lot on the agenda for Tuesday.
Yes, that's going to be the mid-year report for economic development and community development. And who else is that night? Do you guys remember?
Information systems, and it should also
And human resources. So there's 4 of them that night.
Oh,
I
man.
can commit to the Tuesday, but the Wednesdays are going to be difficult.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to do Wednesday.
Me as well.
Okay, so we'll just try to get through
Well,
it all.
I can always postpone the walk a couple of weeks. I'm going to be gone the next week, so I wouldn't be here to do it, but we can go into August. I mean, there's no set time frame. It's not like something's going to happen right now that I need to get you to understand, as much as just to clue you in on what people are in here asking and saying and doing is, I think, going to be very insightful for you to understand what's going on here.
Could we defer just a couple of the reports for one meeting?
Why don't we leave them on the schedule and see how many we get through? And we can always defer them that day. Because if it just ends up
I would
that.
just hate to have someone stay and not have them not have to present, and I don't want people to feel rushed. So,
Okay, we can, yeah.
feel a
I
couple
mean,
of maybe.
yeah, that's an awful lot just in the reports, without anything else.
I don't want anyone to feel, because we had a presentation once where someone apologized for how, no, just peel a couple off.
All right.
Anyone else? Nick?
Along those lines, I don't know if we can add to an agenda-specific item, maybe after that walk, to talk about some policy decisions about River Street and how we're going to use it in the future, and what our intentions are along those lines, but to make sure it's an
Yeah, I mean,
agenda item to
I would
talk about.
suggest that's probably could be a meeting
That's what I was thinking.
itself. What I wanted to just do here, the fire department's going to be there with us. They're going to share what their ideas are, et cetera, et cetera. Probably Public Works may have some, police department could have some thoughts. I mean, there could be a lot of give and take there, a lot of dissemination of information. So, yeah, I mean, I'm envisioning this is going to be an ongoing, moving conversation for 3 or 4 months. But I mean, I think we got to get it started, and I think the best way to do it is physically get you out to those sites so that everybody can see them.
Anyone else for others? I have a couple of others, if I may. I think it was last week or sometime a week or so ago, we had a electrical outage. I guess it was caused by ComEd. And, but I keep talking about, how great our electric utility is. It keeps getting brought up, that it's such a redundant system. Well, our electricians were able to basically flip a switch, so people in Batavia weren't without power as long as people on ComEd's power grid were. Gary, is that a true statement?
So ComEd serves us off of 2 of their systems, and one of their systems went down. And our system automatically switches over, so that we were then connected to the good system on the ComEd side. So those people who are on the system that failed in ComEd were out of power.
So I just wanted to bring it, we talk about it, but here's a case in point where our utility really does shine. And so I just wanted to bring that up. Second one is, has there been any movement, just for Laura, I guess, has there been any movement on the Newsboy Alley arch?
No.
Okay.
There hasn't.
Maybe you can put that on your to-do list.
Are you suggesting we take another walk by it?
We'll
be over there anyway.
We should. I mean, we did approve it, so I would like to finish it.
Thank you.
So, all right, that's it for others.
I got one more, just remember.
Please.
Quickly. Alderman Stark, when she was on the city council, served for a number of years as the TRICOM representative for the Batavia City Council, and each city council has a representative on the board. So she's no longer there to do that. So I've asked Alderman Rosado if he would pick that up and go with it, because quite honestly, he works right down the street from TRICOM. And it is pretty easy in its morning meetings, sometimes middle of the morning meetings. He tells me he has the ability to get away for an hour or so. And both our police and fire chiefs are the other two representatives on the board. So I'll be bringing that to you for a vote of confirmation next Monday night, but I just wanted to let you know he is going to be the guy to do that for us.
Excellent. I think a very good representation. Awesome. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Anything else? Well, I guess we're then going into executive session.
Yes.
We don't need a motion or anything.
We have to move to go into it.
We have to move to go into it, just not move to go out. Anyone care to make a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Chanzit, second by Salvati. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
And there will be no vote coming out of executive.